Good evening to all of you, and good morning to Paul for today's webinar. And that's the right time where we are discussing about a very interesting topic, and nobody else can speak about this topic other than Paul. So I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you other members who are present here. We have with us our chairman, Mr. Rustam Kerawala. So Paul, I'll introduce Mr. Rustam Kerawala, who completed his engineering. And after his engineering from MIT, he decided to enter into hospitality business. And from hospitality business, 14 years before, he started schools, one school. Today, we have chain of schools across India where we have around 60,000 students, 6,000 faculty members, large chunk of people. But a couple of years before, he decided to move from there and added a new line of thought, how he can move into digital business. So he talked about how can we create platforms and look at digital content and how it can be served to larger number of people. We have a very interesting concept in India, which is called PPP, triple P, called public-private partnership, where the private players and public institutions come together. So he is a champion of public-private partnership. And then he took over the Balwaris, the early child care centers. And he also took over some government schools. And whatever are the learning lessons, efficiency, productivity-wise from the private schools, he took it there and he implemented them in the public schools there. So there are a couple of people who are believed to be the thought leaders and champions who are going to influence how the education is going to evolve. Recently, a magazine called Education World did identify those 50 people, and Mr. Kerawala is one of those 50 people in the country who is going to alter the way education is being taught in this world. So though he started with a private domain of work, today his work spreads to public sector also. He also works in online space as well as offline space. So welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I'll also introduce our vice chair, Kavita ma'am. So 14 years before, when Kavita ma'am joined with us, Kavita ma'am thought that the kind of content that goes to our classrooms were very basic content, and we need to really make those content very scientific. So he brought that idea of age appropriate and subject appropriate content into that part of it. But over the period of times, he has contributed in other sectors of academic development. So he heads the academic operations in that case. Very dynamic leader, has been awarded multiple times by different magazines, news channels for our work there. I welcome ma'am to today's session there also. So I take this opportunity to introduce Paul to everyone who is present here. I'll put Paul on full screen. And he is today's main speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, today you get a chance to learn from a passionate, high energy expert in the broad application of positive psychology. It's an honor and a special excitement for me to introduce our speaker, Paul Krismer. In 2012, Paul began his work as a certified executive coach. Prior to that, he had over 20 years experience as an executive leader of large teams. Paul has navigated enormous projects, including massive IT developments and profound organizational culture changes. In 2016, Paul founded the Happiness Experts Company. He is the best-selling author of Whole Person Happiness. He runs his own business training and coaching clients, and he speaks all over the world. Today, he is here to share his unique insights with us in India. And for the first time, he is speaking to people in India, parents, students, and teachers. He's a noted public speaker and trainer. His authentic and passionate commitment to his subject matter shines through his work. Playful and captivating storytelling complements his intelligent and accessible presentation of the science of success. His teaching is powerful, authoritative, and convincing. At the same time, Paul is exceptionally practical, providing tools that audience and entire workforce can immediately use. Paul Krismer has a proven track record as an inspirational leader. For 20 years, he has served in senior management roles, overseeing hundreds of employees, multi-million-dollar projects, and cheerfully growing future leaders. As a certified executive coach, Paul is appreciated for his kind-hearted yet relentless pursuit of the client's best life. Helping people to reach greater happiness and success is trademark promise. Paul's best-selling book, Whole Person Happiness, How to Be Well in Body, Mind, and Spirit, is one of a leading book in the area of positive psychology. He teaches cutting-edge positive psychology. I have read him, so I can call him as a truly happiness expert. Paul is a proud member of the International Positive Psychology Association and the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. Paul, I welcome you to today's session. Now I will request our chairman, Mr. Kerawala, to inaugurate the event.
So good evening, everybody, and thank you for taking the time out, and good evening, and sorry, good morning, Paul. I know it's an extremely busy schedule for you, but I guess in these times, emotional well-being is even more important than any other time. With people locked up in the houses for quite a long time now, we've had a number of lockdowns, and especially Bombay, Bangalore, Pune. I guess these cities have been hit the worst. So yeah, no better time than talking about it, overcoming the stresses and focusing on emotional well-being. Welcome, sir. And please, the stage is yours.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Tapan, Kavita, Rustam. I'm genuinely, deeply honored.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I'll request Kavita ma'am to speak few words. She is present here. Also, few words to all the people present here.
Oh, I think I'm feeling very honored to have you here, Paul. And it is so wonderful to be known as the happiness expert. So, I mean, personally, I believe that we don't need reasons to be happy, actually. You know, happiness is within us and we don't have to look for it outside. Also, that it is my responsibility how I keep myself happy. But today, during these difficult times, I'm sure audience here would want answers to many of their questions, you know, like how do we feel better physically and mentally? How do we move through the day or, you know, through our daily grind with meaning and, you know, purpose and joy? Can we successfully, you know, come out of these days without any depression or anxiety? You know, how do you not get disturbed? So these are the questions I'm sure the audience is also looking forward to having a very informative and thought-provoking session with you. So welcome, Paul. Thank you for sharing some of your knowledge and insights with us today.
Thank you, ma'am. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I hand over to Paul for his lecture, I'll also request you to ask your questions. So you can send your questions both on chat. As many of you are listening on Facebook Live, you can put your questions on Facebook Live also. And Paul is a person who combines action words. If you read a mail of Paul, it is as soft, as sober as you talk to Paul there. I'm so happy to know Paul, read his work and invite him to this event there. Paul, it's all yours now.
Thank you so much, Tapan, and everybody. And all of you who have taken your time out of your evening to spend time with us here this evening. We've got a special opportunity. We're going to take next hour and a little bit, and I'm going to teach you some basic positive psychology. And a little bit of me feels tempted to say it's tone deaf. It's missing the point of our current social context to talk about happiness, because some things in society right now are pretty tough. And I don't want to miss that point, that given the hardship that's throughout the world, the virus obviously is causing major changes in people's lives. There's grave economic consequences. And sadly, you know, there's things in our popular culture that are impactful, like Sushant Rajput, who recently took his life. And when we look at someone like that, we say, oh my goodness, they've got everything we could possibly want going for them. And yet somehow their despair was so great that they would take that action. So it seems odd to talk about happiness in that context. And I will briefly, at the end of the conversation today, talk about serious negative mental health, what we should do about that, only very briefly. My area of expertise is on the opposite end of the spectrum, when we're thriving, when we're flourishing, when our positive emotions are abundant. And that isn't always easy to get. But the science of positive psychology has advanced in such a way that we know it's not lucky circumstance that causes a person to be happy. It's often a set of skills. Many of us are fortunate enough to learn some of these skills as children, and we just automatically have them in our adult life. But the beauty of the research is that we can learn additional skills and grow happier over time. And so that's what the purpose of today's presentation is, to give you a little starter taste of this research and this field of interest. But before I jump into it, I would love to invite people in the comment section in the Zoom chat room to tell me what the emotional context is for you in life right now, given what's going on, economic consequences, the virus, popular culture having nothing but bad news, the crazy politics internationally. What is your emotional context, or how do you see the emotional context of India? I invite people to just throw a few words up into the chat room. Fear and uncertainty. Can't socialize with friends. Yeah, I hear that. Turmoil. Managing my wife. Panic, turmoil, pandemic. Yes, yes. This is a time of uncertainty. I mean, that is, if there's anything that we could say that is defining our period across the world, let alone in India, it's this sense of uncertainty. Fear and anxiety. I like what people are saying. I think we're of one mind, and we're of one mind whether you're in Canada, India, or anywhere else. And part of what my talk is going to be, and I've specially formulated some of the techniques I can teach you today, is so that we can have some calm rationality in the midst of reasonable times to be afraid. You know, we might say, gee, we should not feel turmoil. We should not feel uncertain. We should not feel anxiety. And that would be silly. We are feeling what we're feeling because our circumstances are sufficient to cause those feelings. And those feelings, there's nothing wrong with them. There is nothing wrong with any feelings. If people are depressed or anxious or fearful, those are all good in that they really are who we are. And there's no feelings that I think should be invalidated. And we'll talk again a little bit more towards the end of the presentation about that. But if we can have tools that make us more positive, have more of the positive emotions, I'm going to make the argument today, make the case today that we'll have much greater benefit from those positive emotions than we will from the negative emotions, and that there's practical ways we can accumulate more positive emotions in our lives. And now I use the word happiness as an umbrella phrase. Happiness could describe any number of positive emotions, including just joy, where people smile from ear to ear and they're just happy. But there's also things like gratitude and serenity, hopefulness, pride, amusement, when we're just find laughter in something, humor in something, or inspiration, or even simply interest, curiosity. And hopefully I'll trigger some curiosity in you this evening. And that in and of itself, and all those words I've just described, are very good positive emotions. And when I talk about happiness, I'm talking about any one and any combination of those emotions. A particular professor says the emotion love that we use in the English language can mean on any number of things. And so this professor says specifically, let's just call it a combination of positive emotions. So that I might say, I love ice cream, which might simply mean I have an interest in ice cream and I find it, gives me joy. But if I say I love my sons, my two young men that live in my life, I'm talking about way more than that. Pride and hope and inspiration, and love is this big word. And so any one of these things, including love, are what I mean by happiness. I hope that makes sense. Now, I'm going to make this case, and I'm going to go slide back and forth in my presentation and just show you a few slides. And one of the ones that I wanted to say is that success and happiness are correlated. Scientifically, they're related to one another. And a correlation simply means where you find the one thing, you're sure to find the other. And I think for most of us, there's some intuitive sense to this. We believe that when we reach some level of success, that then we'll be happy. And that's the way to happiness, is get some success and then be happy. And our cultures, Indian culture included, and tragically, I think the West has exported this belief to your country and to others to say that achieve material and popular success and then get happy. So if you get the right job, you get the right education to get that job, and then you marry Mr. or Mrs. Right, and you have the right number of children, and you have the right kind of home and the right kind of economic prosperity, well, then you can be happy. And there is an element of truth to this, of course, because when we meet some measure of success, it momentarily makes us happy. So it's totally true. And that is basically the American dream. And I would say it's an American lie that's been exported to the whole world. And this idea that if we work real hard, and we accomplish something or we acquire something, it's then and only then that we're going to be happy. And of course, for a moment, it's true, but pretty soon the purchase of the new pair of new pair of running shoes ceases to make us happy. And I remember some years ago, I got a great promotion at work, and I came home so bold and proud. And I told my wife, honey, I've got this new job, and it was more money and a bigger office. And I was so proud and thought I was so happy. I took her out for dinner that night, and we were feeling great. And how long do you suppose it was that happiness from my promotion actually lasted? And I often get a whole range of answers from the audiences I speak to. And the truth is, it did not last long at all. I was on my way home from dinner, and not without some good reason. My wife criticized my driving, and my happiness went out the window. I was no longer happy. And how long do you suppose it was before the emotional impact of working in my new, fancier corner office with windows on two sides ceased to make me any happier than my old office that was just 2 doors down? I very quickly, in a couple of weeks, became the same emotional context. And that is so true. The research is very, very clear that material success only has the briefest of moments of making us happier. And so I am going to say to you that the success and happiness being correlated is in fact a true thing, but not the way I've described it. It's the opposite. The science is compelling that when we get happy first, then we get success, not the other way around. So in order to have great success in life, however you want to measure success for you, if you invest in your emotional well-being, you're more likely to get success. And this is a scientific argument. It's not one that I'm saying because it's my wishful thinking. It's in fact excellent science. And I want to kind of convince you of that science. And a lot of the science comes out of the United States. There's much less out of the East, but there's more and more people studying positive psychology in India and China and other places. But most of the studies I'm going to refer to are American in context. And what we do know is that cross-cultural ways to happiness tend to be pretty similar. So I feel confident in sharing the science with you. If you survey first-year university students for all kinds of personal characteristics, including how wealthy mom and dad are, what their physical health is like, what their grades were in school that allow them to get into university, what their social lives are like, and on. You survey all these kinds of things. And then you leave these young people alone for 20 years and you catch back up with them and you see which ones had the greatest career and income success. Well, the best predictor of all things was how happy those young people were 20 years previously. It was even a better predictor than how wealthy mom and dad were. And that shocked me. I thought if mommy or daddy were rich, then their son or daughter would likely do well in their career. But the best predictor was how happy those people were 20 years previously. And there's lots of other research in this field too. There's a ton of research with respect to health and the body-mind connection, which frankly we've learned a lot from the East, from India and other countries, that demonstrate the connection between our emotions and our physical health. It's incredibly well proven in science now that the happier we are, the better our health will be. The lower our heart rate, our immune systems will be boosted. There's one interesting study that probably most universities wouldn't get permission to do anymore, but I love telling this one because it's weird. They took young people, university students, who are the most studied laboratory rats on earth, right? Because they come to the laboratory. And they injected these young people's noses with the cold virus. But just before doing that, they surveyed them for their levels of personal happiness, found out how happy they were, injected them with this virus, and then sent them home for a week. And they came back to the laboratory a week later. And they simply surveyed them and said, how are you feeling now? And not only did these young people report just how they're feeling, either worn down or really well, they were then examined by a panel of 3 medical doctors who objectively examined them for signs and symptoms of a cold, things like nasal inflammation or chest congestion. And the science, again, was overwhelmingly clear that those young people who a week previously reported the most happiness had both the fewest experienced symptoms of a cold and also the fewest examined signs and symptoms of a cold. So there's powerful, persuasive evidence that happiness leads to better physical health. And this one's going to be kind of obvious to you. Happy people generally have warmer, longer lasting marriages and friendships. And that may seem ironic because here I am teaching happiness and I'm divorced, but you know, sometimes we say in Canada, those who can't do teach. But marriages typically are going to be warmer and happier amongst the people who are in fact filled with lots of positive emotions. And hey, Tapan, I can still see you on screen. Do people know Winnie the Pooh in India? Yeah? Winnie the Pooh has this little funny donkey friend, and the donkey is the saddest character ever. Like, oh, poor me, today's gonna be bad. It's gonna rain again today. And that's Eeyore, his name's Eeyore. That's Eeyore's experience of life. And do we want to marry Mr. or Mrs. Eeyore? Is that the person we're looking for as a life partner? And I mean, obviously the answer is no. We want people whose eyes are bright, their shoulders are back, they greet us with a big smile, and we go, yeah, that's the person I want to be with. And so it's obvious that happy people tend to have warmer, bigger, longer lasting, and more variety in their friendships and relationships. What's less obvious is this next piece of science, which is that happy people are literally smarter. I know that sounds bizarre, but if we do what we call priming people, so we induce a mood, and it's quite easy to do. You bring people into a laboratory and you have them watch a video, and you could have them watch a video of something horrible, you know, starving infants in Africa and make them feel very sad, or have them watch little comedy features from sitcom TV programs. And in the one case, people feel light and happy, in the other case, really sad. And then once they're induced into their mood, we simply test them for creativity or logic problem solving or access to both short-term and long-term memory. And happy people don't do a little bit better. They do a lot better on these tests simply by being induced into a positive mood. And here it gets even stranger. Happy people literally see more. So again, in this test, we induce a mood. Some people are made to feel happy, some people are made to feel sad. But in this test, they have computer monitors all the way around the subject. And after their mood's been induced, they're shown a test video, and then they're asked, what did you see? And the people who were made to feel a little bit sad, they look at the video and they say, hey, you know, I saw that gorilla on the screen, and the gorilla was in a forest, and yeah, that's about all I saw. And the happy people who saw the exact same video say, hey, I saw that gorilla and he was in a forest. There was a little white rabbit running around, and I don't know what you guys were doing, but there were fireworks over here and unicorns over there. What was that all about? Right? They literally are seeing more. And then finally, happy people statistically show that they have more energy. And all of this seems kind of unfair because like happy people already have a ton of good things going for them. Why should they get all these objective measures about life success? If there were any justice in the world, maybe the miserable people should be the ones who get all these advantages. But that's not the way it works. We are evolved as a species that when we're at our best, it's when we're feeling positive emotions. And so all of these things and many other demonstrations of objective measures of success are demonstrated to come with people who have high levels of positive emotions. I hope I'm making sense. Can I get a few people in the comment section to say, yes, you're following me, that this science is convincing? This is what we call consensus science. There's no longer any real debate about whether or not this is true. And it's really important for me to be persuasive on this point. Thank you for all the yeses coming on the chat room. Thank you so much. It's really important for me to be persuasive on this point because the rest of my presentation might fall a little bit flat if I simply came across saying, oh, you should invest in your happiness. And you might go, well, what's the return for me? And of course, the one return is that you get to be happier. But the other return is that you get more from life that you want. Whatever that is that you want for life, you're more likely to get it if you're investing in your emotional well-being. I hope that makes sense. Now, I want to switch to this then slide and say, well, isn't the obvious next question then, if happiness leads to more success, and it does, then isn't the question, well, how do we be happy? Well, maybe this is it. Can I get people in the chat room to tell me what game they're observing? Do you guys know what it is? All the young people who are watching this video, they'll probably know. Tetris! Yes, it's Tetris. Tetris This is the original 1980s version of the game being played by a guy named Dan Zed. And Dan Zed is the world's best player of Tetris. And back in the 1980s, memory was really expensive to build into computer games. And you'll see up in the upper right-hand corner of this screen, the score is wrapping away. And because memory was expensive, this game was programmed only to go up to 999,999. And then this guy will break the game. It'll go to the blue screen of death when he wraps the score. And all we have to do is watch for 27 minutes and we'll see him do it. I'm kidding, we won't watch for 27 minutes. But if we did watch for 27 minutes, we'd see this guy break the game. Now, why do you suppose he is so good at this game? And you can watch as we're sitting here right now. He's very, very good at this game. The whole object of the game, for the few of you who might not know it, is you have to keep clearing the lines of blocks out. And if the pieces stack all the way up to the top, you can't get any more pieces in, it's game over. And this guy will play effortlessly for 27 minutes and beautifully, so strategically putting the blocks together. He's the world's greatest player. And you can just imagine how proud his mother is, you know. Can anybody tell me? I'm kidding, of course. His mother probably wished he was doing something else. Why do you suppose he got so good at this game? Can I get a comment or two in the chat room? Why did he get so good? Focus, I see that. Excellent. Thank you, Namitha. Passion, yes, I expect he's passionate about the game. He liked it. Yes, I'm sure he was enjoying it. He loved doing it. What else? Why did he get so very, very good? He was happy playing. Dedication. He played a lot. Practice. Yes, that was the word I was looking for. His devotion to this game resulted in him putting in thousands of hours of time playing Tetris. So you can imagine with thousands of hours in playing, he would get very, very good. Now, the interesting thing is all the time that he was practicing, he was literally rewiring his brain. He was literally changing the physiology of his brain. That's called neuroplasticity. And it's a relatively recent discovery in brain science that we can change the actual configuration of our brains. And I'm going to take you off that cool slide and show you a different one. This is an actual brain under an electron microscope, and it's working. It's actually a brain that's alive and being observed. And brain cells are called neurons, and neurons communicate one to another through electrical impulses. So it's this beautiful picture. You can see this brain has a ton of activity going on, and you can see some places where there's only a few little brain cells present, or none at all in the black spaces, and other places where there's big concentrations of brain cells, and they're communicating at the speed of light to other parts of this brain. Super, super cool. That's the brain cell, and those are brain cells, and that's a brain working at close to the speed of light. It's amazing. And when you magnify a brain even more, you can see individual little brain cells like the one at the top of your screen. And that little tiny individual brain cell is being born in our brains all the time. Now, Tapan and I and others will know that in years past, people of my generation, we were taught we were born with a certain number of brain cells, and that was all you'd get. And in infanthood, some of the brain cells would die, and childhood would be a little bit better. And then teenage years would be terrible. You'd have tons of brain cells dying and dying and dying. And then in our adult life, it would continue. Our brain cells would die year by year by year until we basically got dumber and dumber and dumber until we were dead. And it turns out that's not at all true. Even old guys like Tapan and I, we have little baby brain cells being born in our brains all the time. And these little brain cells only exist for one reason, and that is to connect with other brain cells. And so right now, in all of your brains, there are little baby brain cells that are doing what they're meant to do. They're basically looking to join a party. They're running around inside your brain looking to make a connection with other brain cells. It's amazing, and it's happening for all of you right now. Now, I want to show you another really cool slide. Down in the bottom right-hand corner and across the middle, there are two neurons. And these two neurons are going to make an original creation on Earth. Believe it or not. So we are going to see something live and on screen, this video of an original creation on Earth. Here it comes. You might want to cue the choir of angels. Ah, boom. There it is. So two neurons connecting for the first time, making a connection. And the video is just going to loop. But I want to ask you, what do you suppose would cause those brain cells to make a new connection like that? Can I get some comments up in the chat room? Why would two brain cells connect for the first time like that? Attraction, I like that answer, Vishnu. What else? Why would a new connection be necessary? Diptiman, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Yes, new knowledge, new stimulation, some kind of new stimulus. And when we've got a new stimulus, the brain has to say, if I'm going to pay attention to this, I need to make a new connection to understand it. So if that makes sense, these new brain cells come together, make a new connection. And what do you suppose would cause that connection to fuse together so that it's permanent? Some people are already getting focusing on something, new connections among old pieces of information. If you kept repeating that same stimulus that caused the new connection, and the brain had to keep dealing with that information, it would make this reasonable conclusion that it should connect those cells on a permanent basis. Continuous trigger. I like that, Dr. Zahar. Very good. So these brain cells come together, and this is exactly how our brains normally work. Let me come back to my slides. So our brains come together, make these new connections, and then if we go back to this slide and pretend that this is the brain of that great Tetris player, Dan Zed, and you can see, like in the bottom right-hand corner there, there's this massive concentration of brain cells. And I would make the argument to you that I'm convinced is factually correct, that Dan Zed would have literally built himself a brain that made him expert at playing Tetris. That with thousands of hours of practice, little baby neurons joined the parts of his brain, whether it was hand coordination or visual acuity, that made those parts of his brain function better so that in an automatic way, Dan Zed was an expert player of Tetris. In my business, we say this: neurons that fire together, wire together. Neurons that fire together, wire together. And what that's really saying is that anything we pay a lot of attention to over a lot of time grows stronger and is more automatically done by each of us in our lives. And if you remember when you were young and you were learning to tie your shoe, all your concentration, super focused, you just slowly but surely you tie those little pieces of string together on your shoe, and it took all your focus. And now if you're 15 years old or older, you can probably just bend down, tie down your shoe, and you can be carrying on a conversation with somebody at the same time, and it's just no problem. Tie your shoe. And it's because you learned that skill so well, your neural connections are so focused and so concentrated that that's an automatic highway for you. And that's the argument I want to make today, is that the same can be true for your own personal happiness. That we know happiness leads to more success. We know that happiness is a skill that we can build. And if we build these skills well enough, just the same as you can tie your shoe automatically, you can grow to be happy automatically. And all we have to do is get enough input, enough happy moments, enough positive attention paid in our brain so that this becomes more automated. There was a guy named Marcial Losada who, Marcial knew somehow what the number was going to be of positive to negative input that you would need in order to be a happy person. It's essentially what we call in the science overcoming a negativity bias. That's the bias we all grow up with for survival reasons, that we better really pay attention to things that hurt us so that we don't die. And 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 years ago, in a different time, being afraid of the saber-toothed tiger or eating the poison berry, that kind of stuff was a daily experience. And so we evolved as a species to be very focused on those things that made us emotionally feel bad, because that negative emotion was a trigger to us to pay attention to stuff that would help us survive. And in order to overcome that negativity bias, we need to have enough positive things accumulate. And people just didn't know how much positivity you would need. And a gentleman named Marcial Losada, he's a researcher out of Stanford University in the United States, figured it out. And he figured it out because he was sitting on some amazing data. He had studied business teams having sales meetings for many years. And he knew exactly how well these business teams did. He knew what their profitability ratios were. He knew what their peer and superior evaluations looked like. He knew what their customer service ratings were. He knew objectively how good these teams were. What he didn't know was how happy these teams were. But he had something else. He had thousands of very boring hours of these teams having sales meetings, videotapes of people having boring sales meetings. And he had a small team of researchers help him. And they watched every single minute, every single second of these thousands of hours of videotape. And they recorded how happy each and every interaction was. So when they did that by looking at things that was each word either happy, negative, or neutral. And for every single word spoken, they made a mark, happy, negative, or neutral. For every interaction, they'd say, was the person speaking about themselves or inquiring of somebody else? And they took a look at just this kind of positive to negative data points. And after looking at 675,000 negative data points, they learned that it was a 3-to-1 ratio was necessary. That is, that you have to have at least 3 positives for every negative in order for a person to be experiencing a happy life, a happy outcome. That's called the Losada line. Marcial Losada invented it. And if you had worse than 3-to-1, if it was like 1-to-1, one positive thing for every negative thing, it was a poor performing team. If it was 2-to-1, it was still a poor performing team. If it was 2.5-to-1, it was still poor performing. But as soon as it got to 3-to-1, there was this tipping point, and the teams would start breaking away from the others, and they were high performing teams. And if they got all the way to 5-to-1, they were exceptionally good teams. And the best sales team anywhere recorded and where this research was done in the United States, it was 5.9 happy interactions, positive interactions to every 1 negative interaction. And that particular team was the best performing sales team in the country by a very wide margin. They were an incredibly successful team. They were like the rock star for the company. Now, at first, this research might sound a little bit questionable, but other positive psychologists have come to the exact same numbers, that you need 3-to-1 or greater in order to have a positive life, which then results in all those successful outcomes I talked about earlier. So how do we get there? How do we get these high numbers? Well, it's pretty simple. We simply ask the question, what's going well? And I know it almost sounds stupid that it's so simple. But that's the question we have to ask to realize the positive things in our lives. And maybe for just a moment, and I know things are grim. Right now in India, there's all the troublesome stuff going on, and here in Canada and around the world. Can I have you reflect for a moment, and maybe just to please the people, the hosts who are putting on this wonderful event, what's going well at school right now? Can I get people to throw a few things up in the chat room? What's going well? Classes online. We're still connected, going to school, online engagement. Do you have some great teachers? Virtual sessions. Kids are happy to see the teachers. Wonderful. Yes. Happy students. Interacting with the kids. Good, 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 good. Dedicated teachers. And do we have the resources now, the technology to make what even 10 years ago would have been much more difficult? BLS sessions going good. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for that feedback. Of course, this thing's going well. And I hope most of you are finding that your home lives have some level of calm and peacefulness, that there's people in your life who support you and are cheering you on. That whenever we pause and choose to think about what's going well in our lives, there is information that we can get from that. And when we look in organizations, it's a very good thing for your school teachers as the leader of the classroom, or for the administrators for the school that are listening, or for parents who are listening, to just use this tool as a way to get conversation going in your family, in your business, whatever it is. Start your meetings, your time together by asking what's going well. And that's the opposite of what we usually do. In my experience in Canada, usually people are beginning meetings with an agenda, and we could change the name of agenda to list of problems. And it's just one problem after another we're going to discuss. And that's totally fair. That's the reason why we come together to do work, to overcome challenges. But it sets an emotional context that can be a bit negative. We start with these worrisome, deep problems. And instead, if we were to say, hey, what's going well? We might find that we can at least change the emotional context, see that we've got these strengths as a business, as a family, as an individual, and then say, oh, I feel good about that. I've got these resources, these strengths, these things that are going well that I can utilize and leverage to get more of in life. That's what we can do as a business. And of course, as an individual, we often call this just a gratitude practice. And a gratitude practice is just when we pause and reflect on what we're grateful for. But I don't particularly like the word gratitude because it has a connotation that I'm supposed to feel a particular emotion. And I don't want anybody to tell me which emotions to feel. I just want to feel what I feel. So I like the question more by simply saying, what's going well? And regardless of how we feel, the reflection in and of itself is good. And I want to teach you now one of the most powerful happiness interventions there is. And it's so simple, but the science is really good. They taught this originally to, again, some university students who were the subjects of the research. And they surveyed them for their levels of personal happiness. Then they had them go and do this thing that they were taught for 3 weeks. And then they surveyed them for their levels of personal happiness at the end. And they weren't a little bit happier. They were a lot happier. Where is the microphone, sir? Somebody's asking. I hope you can hear me all right. Somebody there who's asking about that. So if you survey these students after doing this intervention, they're a lot happier. And so much so that the researchers were rather shocked by how much happier they were, that they went away. And after 6 months of this study completed, they went back to these same students and surveyed them again for their personal happiness. And they found that they remained happier 6 months and 3 weeks later than they were when the intervention first learned. And this was in spite of the fact there is some disturbance in the audience. So people who aren't speaking should probably mute their microphones. So someone please do that. So these people were still happier 6 months and 3 weeks after they learned this thing. And that was true in spite of the fact that almost all of the participants quit doing the thing that they had been taught because they were no longer being paid to do this thing that made them happy, because they were paid to participate in the research. So I want to teach you this same intervention with the confidence that if you learn this skill and practice it regularly, you will be happier too. Are you ready to learn it? It's super easy. It goes like this. Every single day, look to your past 24 hours and simply write down 3 things that went well. I know it's crazy easy. It sounds too simple to be true. Every single day, look to your past 24 hours and write down 3 things that went well. It is that simple. Now, the only caveat I have to that, to make it really work, is every single day at the same time, look to your past 24 hours and write down 3 things that went well. And the reason why I say at the same time is that if you say, I'll just get to it at some point during the day, you probably won't. Just like so many other things in our lives, we get busy and we can't get to it. So attach this new habit that you want to have of writing down 3 things that went well to an existing habit, whether that's, when you brush your teeth, when you eat breakfast, when you go for lunch, or something that you're already every single day doing at the same time. Do it then. For me, I have a habit. I get up every day. I wake up every single day so far. So every day before I do anything else, I'm still in bed, I write down 3 things from the past 24 hours that went well. And you might be thinking, well, okay, that's probably going to make me feel good. I look to the past 24 hours and oh yeah, that was good at that, and I feel good. But that's not the point. That is not the point of the exercise. Although it's true, I often reflect on my 3 things that went well. I go, oh yeah, that was good yesterday. But that is not the point. What do you suppose is happening in my brain as I'm looking to my past 24 hours for something that went well? I'll let people throw some things up in the chat room. I'll tell you, I at times when I first started doing this exercise, had a hard time coming up with 3 things. I didn't want them to be really lousy things like saying, oh, there's no holes in my socks. I wanted them to be really, really great things. And so I'd look and look and look. And sometimes I'd be at work and I would say, oh, hey, this thing's going well. That's great. And now I can write something down on my stupid list every morning. Or I'd be at home with my 2 sons when they were much smaller, and I'd see they weren't at each other's throats fighting and arguing. And I go, oh, this is great. It's a big, beautiful family moment. and I'd have something to write down on my list. What do you suppose was going on in my brain? Remember what I just taught about neuroplasticity? New connections. Yes. Thank you, Shital. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. As I'm making these new connections, literally, cognitively, with my brain, searching for things that are going well, I'm laying down neural pathways in my brain to make me automatically want to look for things that are going well. So even though I have the same negativity bias that anybody else has, like if I'm driving in traffic, which sometimes is crazy around here, and someone swerves in front of me and I'm, oh my God, that's so scary. I'm frightened by it. And I think my life's at stake. I might get angry or fearful or something like that. That still obviously happens to me. It helps me stay healthy to have those instincts. But in addition to those instincts, I'm looking constantly for things that are going well. And I've done it for so long, writing down 3 things every day about what went well, that I have these deep grooves in my brain, neuroplasticity, automated paths of finding things that are going well. I've got a big question here. I'm teaching about the brain to students for almost the last 12 years, but never came across this kind of beautiful explanation about the brain. Good. Will we be able to add this happiness factor in their personalities? We'll be able to make more responsible and happy children. Yes, oh, you're so welcome. I'm so pleased, Primalata. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, so we can all train our brains, and the other techniques I'm going to teach today too work on the more or less the same basis, is that we want to create such skills that they're automated, the same way tying your shoes are, or writing your name down on a piece of paper becomes so well practiced that then you can automate skills that make you happy and therefore more successful in life. I hope I'm making sense to everybody, that it's working. Can I get a thumbs up from the people I can see on the screen? Kavita, Tapan, are we getting it? Fantastic. Good. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you. Good. I'm glad you're getting it. It's lovely. So happy to be here to share this with you. Okay, I want to share a little bit of a different take on how to be happy. I'm going to go back to my slides. So we've talked so far in this meeting about 3 main points. One, that happiness precedes success, that predictability of success in life is going to come where lots of positive emotions are present. And secondly, we learned about neuroplasticity, that our brains can be rewired to automate high levels of positive emotions. And then thirdly, we learned that the practice of gratitude, and when I say the practice of gratitude, I mean it in a very literal way, a routine and a ritual every day where we look to what went well in our lives. That those 3 things are the first bit of learning that I've shared with you today. And now I want to share another one. And I think it's especially appropriate given the uncertain times we're in. And I want to talk about mindfulness. And I'm honored to talk about mindfulness because we are so blessed in the West to have learned this from you in the East, from India and other places in the East. And I'm a long time practitioner of meditation. And I actually got that way because I had a bit of a depression in my university years. I'm one of these anxious people who's always doing something, and I had too many things on the go. And I just couldn't keep up with it at all. And one day I just said, I can't do it. And so the university I was attending actually assigned to me a psychologist. And he said, you could be on antibiotic medications or antidepressant medications for the rest of your life, or you could learn meditation. And this was 30 years ago. I said, meta what? I'd never heard of it. And ever since basically the Beatles came back, some of you are too young to know who the Beatles are, but the Beatles are a famous rock and roll band. And in 1968, they went to India, they got a guru, they learned to meditate, and they came back and talked about it in the West and said this was an amazing experience. And ever since then, there has been tons of amazing research done on mindfulness. And it is not just a spiritual path to benefit one's own life. The science is very persuasive that it has huge emotional, physical, and mental benefits. And I am going to talk about the fact that the truth is we all have this monkey mind, this crazy jibber-jabbering, insane mind that speaks in our heads to us all the time. It's almost like somebody is narrating our lives, and that's this little voice inside our heads. And some of you young people might not even be fully aware of that voice in your mind. And if I just gave a bit of silence right now, And those thoughts, or the awareness of feelings that comes up, that's your monkey mind. And if you're pensively waiting for me to say something, you may just have silence. But if the silence goes on and on and on, your thoughts will start to kick in, and that is your monkey mind. And there's a part of our brains that's all about creating that kind of automatic thought. It's something called the default mode network. It's an interrelated bunch of parts of our brains, primarily in the front of the brain where our most advanced thinking happens. And it's basically focuses this default mode network on the past or on the future. And most people have a tendency to spend more time in their past or more time in their future. And my tendency, as I said, tends to be in the future. Some people are dwelling on the past. And often we ruminate on the things that are not very good from our past. Oh, why did I say that to her? She may not like me for that. Or, gee, I could have done so much better on that exam. I wish I had done better there. I should have studied harder, or whatever. And we're thinking and thinking and thinking. And we tend to have the same thoughts over and over again. So if I'm feeling bad about an exam I wrote the other day that I didn't do as well on as I want, I'm probably going to have that same thought many, many times about the same exam. And obviously this serves no useful purpose for us. And same for a lot of the time we spend in the future. If I plan to do some activity and it's something that I'm actually going to do, then that's a useful time of me spending time thinking about the future and making a plan. But often I might be kind of fantasizing about something that I wish were true, and it's a repetitive thought over and over again. Oh, I wish this were true. I wish that were true. And so I'm neither in the past, that's not my life. I'm not in the future, that's not my life. My life actually occurs in the present moment. But our default mode network, the way we usually think, that monkey mind talking in our heads, is usually talking about the past or the future and not what's happening right now. And mindfulness is simply all about being in the now, what's happening right now. So the definition of mindfulness by one of the leading researchers goes like this. It says, it's paying focused attention on purpose. So you're deliberately choosing to pay attention without judgment. That's without some emotional overtone about judging what it is you're paying attention to the present moment. So we can sometimes get seized by something that's so fascinating or scary or intriguing that we're paying very good focused attention. But if it's the car swerving in front of me, it's not on purpose. I didn't deliberately do that. And if it's the car in front of me, I might also have lots of judgment. You terrible driver, I'll be angry about it. And then as soon as it's over, I may still be in that moment. And I'll be going, oh, that guy's so bad. I should call the police and he's going to kill somebody on the road, and all these things that are no longer present. So mindfulness has to have all four of these components: paying focused attention on purpose without judgment to the present moment. And when we can do that, we get this deep, powerful, important sense of calm. We get out of the past, we get away from the future, and we get into what is actually true right now. And I'm just going to pop out of the slides for a second. And I want to ask you in the chat room, if you were to answer the question with all sincerity, what's the quality of your now, right now? Wherever you are right now, what's it like? What's the emotional contact? Is it pleasant, unpleasant? Is it scary? Is it gentle? Is it happy? What's your right now like? Pleasant, happy, I'm feeling blessed, calm, neutral. Yeah, neutral, I love that. Neutral's a good place. Enjoying learning, positive. Yes, you're all giving me the answer I would think. And most of our nows are in fact happy. When we think about it, 95% of the time, maybe way more, 99% of the time, there is no survival risk in my life. I'm not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. There's not a car swerving in front of me. My friends and family are not coming at me with knives and spears. Instead, most of my life in the nows are pretty good. But when our default mode network has us spending a lot of time in the past and in the future, it can be a negative place. We're worried about something that we want to have happen, or we're being hard on ourselves for something that happened in the past. Slightly stressed. Hey, I respect that. Stuck and mixed emotions. Those of you who said those things, I respect that too. I mean, that's just the reality. But generally speaking, most of the time, our nows are pretty pleasant. So when we learn a mindfulness practice, we can actually spend more time in what is generally a pretty good place to be, the now. I'm going to go back to my slides and show you the scientific benefits. And there's only a fraction of them I'm going to show you that come from mindfulness. And this is a terrible slide. It's so ugly because there's so many words on it, and forgive me for putting this up here. But this is just a tiny fragment of what we know from good scientific research about the benefits of mindfulness. In the United States, where I spend a lot of time for work, people are often being sued for malpractice. Doctors are being sued for malpractice. So if you don't give people counseling on nutrition and exercise, and someone's overweight and has a heart attack, they might go back to their doctor and try to sue them for not giving the proper medical treatment. My belief is that that same kind of lawsuit could be launched in the not so distant future if doctors aren't counseling their patients about mindfulness. The benefits are simply so powerful, so consistent, and affect so many parts of our lives that mindfulness should be as important to all of us as good nutrition and exercise is. And I'm not going to read these all to you. You can read them for yourselves. Some of you who are young may not I identify with some of these as much as others, but they're powerful, powerful, proven benefits from mindfulness. And I haven't got time today to teach a lot about how to become more mindful. But I'll give you a little hint. And frankly, given the audience that I'm speaking to, an Indian audience, many of you could probably teach me about mindfulness. And so I don't want to be disrespectful at all to suggest I'm an expert. But after 30 years and going to many, many retreats and having a meditation practice every day, I do feel like it's changed my life. And it's very hard to say how it's changed my life because it's incremental. Every day when I have my little bit of mindfulness practice, there's some little changing in my brain, bit by bit by bit by bit, that incrementally, more and more and more, my life is lived in the now, not in the past and not in the future, but in the wholesome, nurturing, wonderful place that generally I experience in my life. And when it's bad in my life, then I'm fully in the now then too. I literally did have a cougar, a mountain lion, they call it here in Canada, attack my 4-year-old son. That was many long years ago when I was camping. And it was a horrible moment. But there's nothing more gripping and keeping me in the now than something that intriguing, something that exciting, something that compelling. And mindfulness is like that it's as gripping as something horrible like that. But 99% of my life, of course, doesn't have something horrible happening. And by the way, the happy story is my 4-year-old son was perfectly fine. He had a lot of cuts on his head, but he was fine. I had to fight off this cougar. It was a story I'll tell another day. What's my point? Where did I go? Oh, so I want to share with you a little bit about mindfulness practices. And I want to talk about what the science is really getting at. We biological creatures experience a stimulus. Someone pokes you in your side and you, whoa, and you react. It's the same way that algae in a petri dish, if you drop a little drop of bleach in the petri dish, suddenly these algae spread to the outer sides of the dish, getting away from the bleach. Well, we're as simple as the algae. Humans and algae, we're alike as are all biological mechanisms and organisms on Earth, that we react to the stimulus. Well, mindfulness is all about simply stretching the space between stimulus and response so that we're allowed some moment of pause. So the driver may swerve in front of me and I may feel anger arising and this desire to, oh, what are you doing? But I have that little tiny bit of pause to say, oh, I see anger and stress arising in me. And then I get to choose to react to it. Oh no, I don't need that. The driver's now in front of me and I'll let it go. Whew, okay. That's what mindfulness gives us, is this little bit of a gap. And it's not a gap in real time. It's a gap in our experience between stimulus and response where we get to choose our reaction. And scientists call that cognitive diffusion. And cognitive diffusion works like this. It basically says that our emotions and our thoughts, when we've got that monkey mind talking to us all the time, has no distance from who we see as who we are. So I sometimes think that my identity, who I am, is that thought that I have. So I might say, oh, that driver almost killed me. And I have this thought and I believe it's true. And I hold it so close to me that I can't see any perspective on the thought. That thought is overwhelming. And I might be afraid. And so I go, oh my goodness, I was going to die. And that feeling comes in and it's so close, it becomes part of my identity that there's no objectivity. In that moment, I am those thoughts and I am those feelings. And does that make sense? We probably all have that experience sometimes where we're overwhelmed by something. We're frightened. Maybe we're meeting a pretty girl or a pretty boy or a handsome boy that we want to meet for the first time. And we can feel those butterflies arise in us, and we're scared, and we come in and suddenly we can't carry on a normal conversation, and we're petrified, and we think, oh, I was an idiot, and I did that so badly, and now I'm so afraid and embarrassed, and these thoughts and these feelings become who we think we are. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. Your thoughts and your feelings come and they go. They're like clouds in the sky or breezes in the air. One moment my thought is, that driver's terrible, and the next moment it's, oh, that's a pretty tree that's growing over there, and oh, look at that building that's being constructed. And thoughts come and go, and feelings come and go. So cognitive diffusion is the experience that people who practice mindfulness have, where they get more distance from their thoughts and feelings, so that they can hold that thought at a distance and say, oh, that driver was bad, but now I'm going to think about something else. Or, oh, I was afraid, and I can see that emotion of fear and say, oh, I don't really need to keep having that emotion because the threat is gone. And cognitive diffusion, this ability to see things accurately, realistically, calmly, occurs not just when we're practicing mindfulness, but here's where the science gets so brilliant, is that because of neuroplasticity, as we practice mindfulness, we actually put down automated pathways to have cognitive diffusion more often. So this is essentially saying that we will be calm and rational and live in the now and see things correctly outside of our mindfulness practice, just in ordinary life. And that's incredibly powerful because we get to see what the reality of the world is, rather than this sense that the thoughts and feelings are the only reality. No, I get to actually look at my thoughts and feelings as just one of many inputs, the same way that I can see houses out my window that I'm looking at right here, and I can see Tapan and Kavita and people talking in the chat room. My thoughts and feelings are no more real than any of those other things. And when I have cognitive diffusion, I get some of that. So I want to just share with you quickly, and I won't spend a lot of time doing it, but I'll share some thoughts about how we get mindfulness. And the best way to do it is to practice some kind of formal meditation. And I won't teach it today, but I'd love to do it another time. But formal meditation is perhaps the gold standard for how to achieve more mindfulness in one's life. And it provides deep, deep paths for rewiring our brain. And it's about accumulation of time spent meditating. So I can go away to a 10-day silent retreat and meditate a lot. But if that's the only meditation I do for the whole year, I'm not going to get a lot of benefit. It's my daily practice that changes the wiring in my brain. We could also invest in a mind-body practice like yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong or something like that, where our mind and our body are working in concert, and we're trying to quiet the mind so that our only focus is on our breathing and our physical activity. Very powerful mindfulness practice. There's even little kind of, shall I say, constructed mindfulness practices that are really powerful. One of the ones I like to teach is that when we wash our hands, which all of you have done enough times in your lives that you've automated, you don't need to think about washing your hands to wash your hands. You just go in and do it. And your monkey mind can be busy talking in your mind about other things as you wash your hands. So since we wash our hands so frequently, especially maybe in the days of the virus, it's a practice where we can choose to become mindful. So when I go to wash my hands, I really focus on what I'm doing. I turn on the water. I feel the temperature of the water on my hands. I'm getting wet. I put soap on my hands. I rub my hands together. I can feel how slippery they are. I'm paying attention, getting between my fingers, paying close attention. If I'm in a public washroom, I'm sometimes embarrassed because I always reach up and smell the soap in my hands because it's a deeper sensory experience. Then I rinse the soap off and I dry my hands. I know it sounds so crazy simple because obviously all of you are doing this. But if that's what I'm really paying attention to, I'm grounding myself back in a moment of now, washing my hands and not letting my monkey mind race away. And so it's a beautiful mindfulness practice. And because we wash our hands frequently, it's one that can give us little bits of mindfulness frequently throughout the day. Similarly, I encourage people to take their first bite. Canadians love to eat pancakes with lots of syrup. It's terribly unhealthy. But if our first bite of dinner or lunch or breakfast, if we just had a mindful moment with that bite of food. Oh yeah, this is what it tastes like. This is the texture in my mouth. This is what it feels like. And I can feel the saliva building up, and then finally I swallow when it goes down. If we took one bite where we fully enjoyed and experienced our food, that would be a mindful moment that we can build into the day. And finally, this sounds so simple, but if we have a mindful breath, and now that all of you are doing your schoolwork and your work from home, this may be a particularly good time to learn this mindfulness technique. When you come to your desk and you first put your bum down in your chair, before you do anything else, could you take one mindful breath? Maybe we could all do it together here for a moment. And a mindful breath generally has these characteristics. It's a slow, deep inhalation, the breath in, a slight pause, and then an even longer breath out. And there's something that triggers our parasympathetic nervous system, that is the part of our system that makes us feel calm, that's automated when we breathe that way. Because there's never a time in nature that we'll see a tiger and go, ah, never. We'll never breathe like that. So when we breathe deliberately, slowly in, a pause, and slowly out, we automatically get more mindful and calm. Let's just do one breath together. I'll try to lead. Gonna breathe in slowly. Pause. And out for even longer. Oh, that's so good. Maybe we'll do one more. Breathe in with me. Pause. And out even longer. Isn't that rich? It's lovely, right? It's like we can have one of our best moments of the day by just doing that simple mindfulness practice. And I deeply want to encourage you all to adopt a mindfulness practice that works for you, whatever technique, and there's many others we could teach. And I guess maybe I'll jump to something I'm going to talk to you about. I have a YouTube channel, and I teach some little piece of happiness every Sunday morning, all for free. I'm never trying to sell anything. I encourage you, if you're enjoying what you're learning today, go to my YouTube channel and subscribe so that you get a new teaching every Sunday morning. And I'm going to put right now, if everybody can stay out of the chat room for a moment, I'm going to put this in the chat room, and you can see my YouTube channel. There's a link right there. And if you don't add to the chat room right now, so people can go and click that link right now and you can subscribe. And I also have another little offering to you that there's a happiness assessment. It's a scientifically accurate way to figure out how happy you are. And there's a shortcut to that link right there. It's JO.MY/happiness. And if you want to do that, there's no huge benefit from knowing how happy you are, but I like the idea that the science shows that we can build skills that make us happier. And so one of the things I do when I'm coaching clients one-on-one is I often start our coaching practice with them doing this scientifically validated assessment of their own happiness. And then after we've been working together for a number of weeks and months, I have them do the same assessment. And we generally find almost 100% of the time that people are in fact happier by learning some of the skills of happiness. And so that's my invitation to you. Keep learning, keep building your skills. Take what I'm sharing with you today to heart, because we really can grow happier and have more successful lives by simply deliberately practicing happiness. The research is really clear that those people who invest in growing happier, in fact, grow happier. Now, I want to put the link in the chat box, please. Yeah, I have put the links in there. Can you see them? And maybe to Pan, I wonder if there's someplace better I should put it, but I'll also bring them up on screen for just a moment if people want to see them.
I think, Paul, I will post to everybody.
Yeah, and maybe in Facebook Live, it needs to go up on the chat there, so it's not just in Zoom.
Fine.
That's where I put it in Zoom. Sorry, folks, who aren't on Zoom. And I hear a bunch of audio. Can you mute your audio if you're on the Zoom call with me, just so we don't hear background noise? I want to end with this thought. I've talked a lot about happiness, and you can see by my presentation that I'm excited. I love what I talk about. But I do not for a moment want anybody to think that I believe we should not be depressed, anxious, sad, lonely, all those very real human emotions. And some of you today are undoubtedly feeling some of those things. And I know sometimes, especially for young men, I worry about, but for young women as well, we sometimes we don't feel that our society gives us permission to have those feelings, those negative feelings. That we maybe are especially supposed to be stoic and brave and always showing only the good half of ourselves, the good part, the happy parts. And if we were feeling lonely or scared or depressed, there might be this sense that you're not allowed to feel that you're not allowed to share that. And I would just want to say from the bottom of my heart, my deepest conviction is that you must and you should and you are allowed to share that. And maybe that's not easy in the context of your family or your social life, but I am sure there is someone safe in your life. And if you're figuring, I don't know who to share my pain with, I want you to just think, who's the safest person in your life to be with? Maybe it's your grandparents. Maybe it's a counselor at school or a teacher. Maybe it's a best friend. And find that safest person and share what's going on in your life. It is tremendously healthy for us to be able to talk about our emotions, let them be real. And when we let them get air and breathe and see the light of day and share what's going on in our lives, it makes space for other emotions so that we can process our negative emotions and make room for other emotions. So I deeply want to encourage you, profoundly want to encourage you to share what's real in your life with the people that love you and are going to keep you safe. I don't know, Tapan, if we've got a tiny bit of time for questions. I'll also, I had some pause. I wasn't sure if I put up my my email address because I don't know what I'll do if I get 1,000 emails. But I'm going to put up my email address, and there it is. It's paul@paulkrismer.com. And if I'm not overwhelmed by the volume of emails, I, of course, will be honored to address any questions that you might want to ask there, and I can point you to resources. My YouTube videos often have a lot of resources so that as I teach something, I say, hey, there's a way to learn more about this, and it points you to links. But please feel completely free to reach out to me. I am absolutely passionate about the work I do. And I'm so honored that I was able to share with all of you in India, a place that I would so dearly love to come and visit one day. And I'll be even more motivated to do that, having shared with you this morning. So, Tapan, maybe I can turn it back to you to narrate and facilitate the conversation to keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for your time as well as very interesting talk. There are very solid key points, practical points that you have given there. There are a couple of questions, maybe a few questions we can take from the list of questions which we have got here. If you see, one of those questions is about how stress affects mindfulness, is one question which is being asked there. If you'd like to address that question.
I think what mindfulness really does is it lets us know what we're feeling. And so stress is in and of itself not a bad thing. There's healthy stress, right? When the cougar attacked my son, the stress that I felt to go and rescue him was a good thing. It initiated action. And a lot of stress is good. When you're excited about going and playing a sports game, and we want a little bit of stress because it gets our enthusiasm going and we're at our best. But when we're aware of our stress and we can see it getting to that place where it starts becoming negative and it's impacting our lives, mindfulness makes us aware of that, and we can say, oh, gee, this is a bit too overwhelming. I need to do some things for self-care. I maybe need to go for a long walk in nature or spend time with people that are my friends that help me relieve stress. And so mindfulness, we often mistakenly believe it's about clearing the mind. And yes, that's kind of that's the practice. But the benefit is that we then see what's in the mind, right? It's not that we're going to get silent and have, not even the monks that have 20,000 hours of practice have empty minds, but they see so clearly what's in their minds. And that's the benefit of mindfulness, is that we begin to experience our life as it's really happening and not have what's occurring in our lives hidden and invisible. And practicing meditation or mindfulness is, of course, more difficult when we're stressed out, but that's all the more reason to try to practice. And then the mind is going to be busy, busy, busy while we're meditating. And that's okay. Then it's successful meditation. You're seeing your stress. I hope that helped.
There is one question from a student: how to improve concentration and determination towards a course. There's a question like that. Would you like to address that question?
I'd
How
love
can I
to.
improve my how can I improve my concentration and determination?
So the one we've already talked about today, and I won't go on at length about it, but mindfulness is a proven technique to help with what they call elongation of task focus. The ability to pay attention to something for a long time grows as we practice regular mindfulness. So hugely, I'd recommend that. And there's another thing I'd recommend, especially for you young people. When we know our values really, really clearly, with my coaching clients, I actually have them make a determined statement about their top 5 values and in order. So for me, my number 1 value is spirituality. And because I know that, and I've made a decision that that's my number 1 value, every morning, without fail, I start with some spiritual practice, which includes meditation for me. And by knowing my most important values, it's easy then to dictate how my life should play out in the normal course of the day. And so, for example, if you're really clear that your academics are your top value or somewhere in your top 5, by reminding yourself on a daily basis, maybe having them written somewhere down, maybe on the mirror or somewhere on your bedroom wall, your top 5 values, then every time you see those, it'll be easier to say, yeah, what should my life be about today? And it doesn't mean you'll be perfect. Sometimes you'll do other things that you, quote unquote, should not be doing. But more often than not, by knowing what's most important to you, you'll make more decisions that get you towards the things you really want in life.
This is a great insight for the students. If they can identify what are the core set of values that are very dear to them, they can hold on to that and start believing on that part. So there's a question about handling failure. So if we look back to the beginning of our conversation, a lot of people felt that the film actor died because he was not able to get his movies released, though he was a very popular actor there. So also we have students, they don't cope with the stress of learning for whatever reasons there. So how should they handle the failure? That was a question if you'd like to address. Like handling success, happiness is fine, but how to really manage the failure part of it?
I really love that question. So thank you to the student who raised that question. It's a beautiful, beautiful question. And it lets me teach this point. There is tremendously powerful, persuasive science showing that most of the values that are taught in our societies, including in India, lead to less happiness. And the best example of that is materialism, where people want to accumulate physical aspects of wealth, lots of money, cars, houses, and things like that. And the more we like and want and pursue that in our lives, the less happy we are, which is crazy because we want those things because we believe mistakenly that it'll make us happy. So I want to tell you right now, and I'm 100% convinced of this, there is nothing more important in your life than your own personal happiness. That's the thing to chase. Go for what makes you feel good. And I don't mean makes you feel good in kind of a greedy, shallow way. I mean deeply to your values. What is most important to you? And the more we can get away from materialistic values, the happier we'll be. And often those failures that I think people are feeling is because they're not doing the things that get them to those richer, fancier lifestyles that our society so value. So if we fail on an exam, but we worked really hard, we did our best at it, then remember that your highest value is to be happy. It's not that you have to become a doctor or a lawyer or be a hugely successful business person. And I wish those things for you. If that is what you want, go for it. But we will not be perfect all the time. The best thing we can do is be tending to our emotions. Not selfishly. One of the beautiful teachings is that where materialism brings unhappiness, altruism brings happiness. This is scientifically proven. Wanting things makes us unhappy. Wanting to be kind and good to others makes us happy. So if you're failing at something that maybe doesn't get you to the most important values, go do something nice for somebody. Help your mom in the kitchen. Love your brother or sister. Help a poor person on the street by giving them a bowl of rice or whatever. Those things are going to have more beneficial impact for you, and you'll never fail at that. If your heart wants to do good things for other people, that good heart of yours is going to make you happy. And then I guess if I get more specific to the question, Pam, seeing our emotions and recognizing our sadness or our disappointment or our frustration over failures lets us process that. So what we often do here in the West especially is we run away from our negative emotions. We don't want to recognize them or appreciate them, and simply spending a little time with them and reflecting on them tends to make us better able to cope with them, rather than going, oh, I failed at something, and then trying to do something else so that we don't experience the reality of that emotion in the moment. Deal with your failure, see it for what it is, appreciate that you're experiencing frustration or disappointment or whatever, and let that emotion breathe in the light of day, and then eventually it'll fade.
Thank you, Paul. That's a great lesson. There are a couple of people who have asked questions on the Facebook. We would like to take those questions later on because the talk has covered large part of those questions there. But Paul has been very kind, and he has also allowed people to write to him so that if there are not too many questions, we'll be able to respond to them when he's looking into that part. I would like to invite Kavita ma'am now to speak few words before I bring this conversation to a close. Madam, please unmute.
So, thank you, Paul. This has been truly inspirational talk from you, and a lot of positive vibes we can all feel right now. I'm sure all of us with this new insight will try and reach for that greater, bigger happiness and success, for which you yourself are a true brand ambassador. Thank you so much. I have heard this kind of scientific explanation for happiness for the first time in my life. I have read so many books, so many different kinds of philosophies, but this was truly, a new way of explaining what happiness is. It was really wonderful being a part of this, and I'm sure everyone must have really enjoyed. Thank you for giving us your time.
Totally my pleasure. It was an honor to be here.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, madam, for your words. So there are a few things that we can have as takeaways. Number one, your value set. And Paul, from his research experience and also belief that he put happiness is the first value that everybody should pursue in life. Career, goals, money, materialism, that comes secondary. Happiness should be the first one. Second point, he said that whenever you feel sad, whenever you feel being let down, search for a right kind of friend. It may be your father, mother, friend, anybody who can be your man confident or woman confident with whom you can share your feelings. I think once you share, things will come down. Third part that he spoke about in this conversation was about how you can routinely practice. It is one that you understand what has been told today is mindfulness or yoga or meditation. What the real fruit of that will come when people start practicing about it, and that becomes internal to the system. And one of the best part of the presentation was the connections that you spoke about, how these neurons work and why do they really want to see each other, and how by playing a game, a person tried to create a new brain. I'm sure many of the students and parents who are listening, they will permit their children and the children will practice to create a new brain. Today we have understood two brains, one brain with which we are born and one brain that we aspire and we can practice and we can build. One brain which has got all the emotions and the other brain which can be built with positive emotions. And I'm sure people like Paul who are spreading happiness across the world. And today I know there are a lot of conversation people are going to have after this webinar there. A lot of people will follow you over a period of time and wish one day I'll see you in India also. You'll come and speak to everyone here. It's a multicultural country. You'll be amazed by seeing our country and people here. I wish you to come with your two kids and spend time with us in future period of time and address a larger gathering. Whenever there's an opportunity, I would like to invite you to come and speak in that to the larger gathering there. But one thing that we would like to say that all will follow you throughout our life because you are spreading happiness. And there is nobody in this audience who doesn't want to be happy in life. Everybody wants to be happy in life. And you have shown them very simpler ways to be happy in life. And one of the lessons is don't ape the West. A lot of Indians who got success in their life, they started aping the West for that material comfort brings happiness. Today they are confused because on one side they have got that spiritual upbringing that talks about being close to the nature, being spiritual, being devotional, and the other side with which they experience comfort, which they experience material comfort, bodily comfort part of it. In a situation like this pandemic came and it made people more confused about life, what aspect of the life. And you came like an angel to all these people who preach them about how to be happy in life and how to change their path, the course of path they have been following for so many years, and be happy at this point of time. Thank you, Paul, for your time, and I wish all the luck and good to you, and hope to see you sometime in future. Thank you all the participants of this program, and I hope again when we come back after 15 days from now, we'll be able to really bring out one more conversation with you all. The whole objective is to take away pain from your life, take away stress from your life, and try to see how you become happier, how you become more matured, and how our children get good ideas, teachers get great lessons, and parents learn the new lessons of parenting. So that when we come out of the post-COVID situation, we really embrace a new world which is full of happiness. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, ma'am. And good night to all of you.